Today's episode is an introduction to the emotional recovery from a critical illness. Today's episode is an introduction to the emotional recovery from a critical illness. When you make it through a critical illness, you might expect to feel happy, relieved, and even energized. You may think that you should be ready to move on with your life and leave that awful event in the past where it supposedly belongs. After all, you have overcome the illness, or at least the illness's current hurdle. Those around you might presume that you have moved on too. Even if they don't say it outwardly, they might assume you will act as you always have. Resume your normal work duties, your home and educational duties, your parenting duties, and so on, because to them, you have recovered, at least to a certain extent. To everyone else, it might seem that life is moving on, and that part is true. Life does move on. This is one of the aspects of the human experience that we can rely on, even if at times it seems like the world should stop to honor what has happened to us or those around us. But life simply does not. What is not talked about enough, and what you might not expect, is not to feel happy, not to feel What is not talked about What is not talked about enough, and what you might not expect, is not to feel happy, not to feel relieved, and not to feel energized or motivated. What is not talked about enough, and what you might not expect, is to not feel happy, not to feel relieved, and not to feel energized or motivated at all. Getting back to life as you know it is not as simple as it seems. The thing is, after surviving a critical illness, you are forever changed. There is no life as you know it anymore. You do not see or feel life in the same way. I can spot critical illness survivors easily. I have witnessed the ones that have had major breakthroughs and truly cherished life. I can spot critical illness survivors easily. I have witnessed the ones that have had major breakthroughs and truly cherished life. I've seen the ones that run away from the experience right into the hands of substances, and I've seen the ones that remain in a constant state of depression. The ones I see most clearly are the ones like me. The ones who move on with their lives so quickly and get hit so hard with PTSD that they don't see it coming, and they don't even recognize it at first. I was just 19 when I made it through my brain tumor surgery. At home a few days later, I cried. I didn't cry very hard, but the tears started to finally trickle down my face. Up to this point, I had not shed one real tear. When this happened, instead of being given reassurance, and open arms, I was faced with questions and confusion. Why are you crying? What's wrong? And so on. So I stopped. I didn't cry or talk about it again at home. I moved forward. I went back to school 2 weeks after the surgery and back to work not long after that. Figure skating was one of the things I missed the most. I loved being on the ice, but that I couldn't go back to. My brain hadn't collapsed around where the mass once was, and the fluid buildup made it very difficult for me to balance properly. I believe that there was some counseling offered at some point. I remember my neurosurgeon, who is now one of my heroes, offer counseling, but I refused. I said I didn't need it. Remember, I was an abuse victim, so I moved forward through life at a rapid pace at all times. I didn't pause to talk about what I was feeling, and there was no room for that type of discussion in my household as it related to emotions coming from me. The thing is, critical illness is awful. It's scary. It's terrifying. And it makes you feel and think about all of the things you never want to and truly never should have to. It makes you envision your own funeral, It makes you envision your own funeral. It makes you wonder if you will be missed. It makes you wonder who you will be leaving behind. Sounds pretty sad and terrible, right? That's because it is. Sounds pretty sad and terrible, right? That's because it is. So, what steps can you take to manage the emotional recovery from a critical illness? Step 1. Burying the experience, unfortunately, doesn't make it go away. If you have done this, believe me, I fully understand. It's survival. And, at the time, it's needed. However, it doesn't erase what has happened to you. That is still there. If you have gone through or are going through a critical illness, acknowledge. If you have gone through or are going through a critical illness, acknowledge that you have gone through something that is massive. Acknowledge that no one understands your experience better than you. Please give yourself a lot of kindness, a lot of leeway, and a ton of understanding. Those expectations you have of yourself, of your old life, you don't have to lose them, but you have to be flexible with them. Share this episode with those around you if it will help them understand your experience better. Step 2. Understand your needs and be explicitly clear with them. This takes practice. You might not know what you need at first, and you may have to try a few times to get this part right. If you feel that you are being demanding, trust me, you are not. You need this part of you to heal, and having your needs met at a time of vulnerability is going to help with that immensely. If you think you are being clear, be clearer. Leave nothing up for interpretation, because humans naturally don't understand each other. They hear from their own perspectives first. Here are some examples of what you can say. I have survived something huge, and I need to cry about it. Just hold me. I need to be not needed right now. I need you to just sit here with me, silently. Step 3. Don't do this alone. Community is so important. When you are going through something huge or going through a hard time, most people will retract. Don't do this alone. Community is so important. When you are going through something huge or going through a hard time, it is natural to want to retract and not reach out for help. This is a time, though, to fight that urge to be alone. Find others who have been through something similar. It will make you feel less alone, and at a minimum, validate your feelings. Sometimes you need someone else to say to you that you're allowed to feel what you're feeling. There's something about someone saying, "Hey, you're allowed to feel that way," that can be incredibly healing. We don't always give ourselves the permission that we should. I'm going to stop here for today. That was a heavy one, yet such an important message. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to supporting you further on your journey. I'm going to stop here for today. That was a heavy one, yet such an important message for me to share. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to supporting you further on your journey.